And just like that, we're Arcelio and Marcia. How you doing?
Doing great.
Doing
How are
just
you?
great. Doing really well, Charlotte. Good to see you. Good to be with you.
It's always good to be with you. And you know, I just don't think that people know the special place that SAMAP has for me in my heart personally. And I'll tell you why. Did you know why? Did you know why it's so special to me?
No, I did not. I do not know.
Okay. That's why I love doing these shows, because we get to learn so much about each other, because sometimes we don't sit down and talk in a focused way. But let me tell you what had happened. I used to come here. I've been coming to Panama since 2004 because Alfredo is my husband is Panamanian, and I started coming here. It was my first international trip, really. And my first international trip that required a passport. Back in the day, they used to let us go to Jamaica and certain places without it. But anyway, I came to Panama and I fell in love with Panama, but not in the same way that I am now. I love Panama, but I wasn't like, I want to move here at all. There wasn't nothing like that. But I'm going to tell you something. Over the years coming here, because it was a family environment, I just came and did family things. You know, I guess I wasn't that savvy to like look on the internet. You know, the internet wasn't as on and popping, you know, back in the early 2000s as it is now. Took me a lot of years to connect with the Black culture in Panama. And the first connection I had to the Black culture for real in Panama was SAMAP. And I found SAMAP through Carmela Goburn, the Panama Cyber News. That's how I found out about, you know, the Black movement, or the Afro Panamanian culture here, and that it was a thing, you know. And so SAMAP was my first introduction. And I just think learning how, you know, Panamanians, the Caribbean, people from the Caribbean came and built the canal and everything, coming from a perspective of just a commercial understanding. That's not what they taught me at the Panama Canal. And I was so mesmerized by the history and so taken by the fact that we have to go out of our way to be told about our history, or the history and contributions of Black. So SAMAP started me on my journey of doing everything that I'm doing today in Panama. So I say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Good to hear.
So let me start by allowing you all to introduce yourself, and then give us a brief overview of SAMAP. So let's go ladies first and start with Marcia.
That's right. Yes.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Marcia Henry, and I am currently the treasurer for SAMAP. I've been a member for, I don't know how many years, but it's been a while. And I do enjoy going to the museum, you know, go to the office. And I do quite a bit. I've held several positions within SAMAP, not on the board. This is my first time on the board, but I was the elections chair one year. And then by default, I ended up chairing a committee to honor the past presidents, because I thought it was going to be just that piece, but then I ended up see how he's smiling. See how he's smiling there? Okay. So that's kind of my history with SAMAP.
Well, thank God with nonprofit organizations, thank God for people that say yes. You know, and just rise to the occasion. Thank you for that introduction. Mr. Hartley.
Well, you know, I consider myself to be a youth in SAMAP, even with my 72 years of age. I only started in SAMAP within the last 20 years. I did not know of the organization before that. I got introduced to SAMAP because as a Panamanian manager in the ACP, SAMAP in its Conozca su Canal celebration, which is what we're gearing up to do now, in 2003, they elected to honor me, as it selected me as one of the honorees because of the work that I've been doing in the canal. So it was my first exposure to SAMAP as a whole, but I was exposed to, it was a blast because I was involved in going to the Romeria back and some of the other activities they had during that week. I was tasked to be the canal speaker for SAMAP at the Romeria. And then, of course, then I had to participate in the gala. So I became then aware of this organization and what it was doing. And I thought it was just a magnificent thing. I did not know of many Black organizations in Panama that was doing that type of support and promotional work. And so I decided to jump on board, and I gave a donation, became right off the bat, became a lifetime member of SAMAP. And I began to support in many ways what they were doing, and slowly got involved, started going to the meetings, and over the years, became much more and more involved. And I have been on the board, for at least over the last maybe 10 years, at least I've been on the board in various positions. And before I had been actually nominated to be the president, I think it was back in 2017 or 18, somewhere back there, 16. 16, in fact, it was 17. I was supposed to have been nominated for the presidency. And but my wife got sick. Wife got ill and had to go into surgery and all sort of things. And I just backed away from the presidency. And actually, that year, Melva picked it back up. She had been president twice before, or 3 times before, and she picked it up. So I became, at the time, I think I was just, I don't remember, vocal, what's that called? I forget the name in English, but I was on the board anyway, but in a minor position. And then when we came back after that period, or 2 years, I decided, well, I sort of owe it to the organization. They had been requesting, and so I became president in 2020. Of course, that's the time that we're being struck with the COVID conditions, which made things change dramatically.
Right.
SAMAP had been an organization that had been meeting at the museum for 40 years almost, and we had to start doing this on Zoom. So that's where I became involved. I jumped in. I became president 2020, 2021, and then I was reelected again in 2023 for another 2 years. So I'll be president in 2023-24.
So SAMAP was started in 1980, correct? Was it 1980?
SAMAP started actually in March of 1981.
Okay.
The museum was inaugurated in December of 1980. And SAMAP was an organization that started up almost in parallel. The government director of the culture back then, Reina Torres de Arauz, who was the one who decided to make this church turn it into a museum. She did a wise thing also and approached members in the community and tried to get them to become support agents for the museum. Recognizing that in many ways and over the years, the government tends to start but not finish. And so SAMAP was organized as a support agency that would sort of stand by there and to ensure in some ways that the government did what it had to do, but if they failed, to step in and do what was necessary to be done. And so it has been doing that for the last 42 years.
That was ingenious. So the museum, the West Indian Museum, is a government entity.
It is, and it's good that we make an emphasis on that because over the years, there's a lot of folks would tend to believe that the museum belongs to SAMAP. And I must say what SAMAP means, it's a Society of Friends of the West Indian Museum of Panama. And that's the acronym in Spanish. So because of the involvement and the intense participation, and they're always there fact, SAMAP as a promotional venture does two large scale activities. They have a cultural fair that's done at carnival time, and then they have the gala celebration in August. And that fair used to be carried out on the grounds of the museum in the patio area. And so folks tend to relate that, well, this museum belongs to SAMAP. It's not. It actually belongs to the government. But we have been a support arm for all these years and have done tremendous contributions to maintaining that museum open. In fact, of the a little over 20-something museums that the government has throughout the country, well, there's 20-something throughout the country. There's supposed to be 19 or 20 government museums. I don't think there probably maybe 6 of them that are currently open. And of those that have been there since the West Indian Museum was instituted, ours is probably one of the only 3 that have remained permanently open for all those 40-something years.
Wow.
The others have closed. The largest ones we have are closed. They're doing remodeling. They have been closed for many years. And so this support work that SAMAP has done has been key and instrumental in maintaining the museum open. It was closed in 2017 for maybe about 10 months actually, because they were doing structural repairs, renewal of the building, interior and exterior. And that's the only time in that 40-year period that the museum has been closed.
Wow.
Also, I add that back in the day, we also did an Easter sunrise service on the grounds of the museum. And that was very, very well attended, but
yes,
so many things have changed that we don't do anything on the grounds anymore.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that that's very, very important to point out. I think it's very important to point out because that really just really magnifies the importance of having an organization behind this government entity to make sure that it keeps going. So, imagine, and a lot of people who are listening, I have probably visited the museum, hopefully if they haven't, they will now. And if you see how, well it's kept, see how they have creatively taken what was the original church, right? The church built by the Diggers and the West Indians in Panama in the early 1900s, correct?
The church was built in 1910. It's a Christian mission church, originally a Christian mission church. And over the years, of course, as the population or the West Indian population declined, it became somewhat abandoned. And that's when the government stepped in and decided to rescue the building and make use of it. And I think it was an outstanding decision.
Yes, I do too. I do too. And, like I said, I appreciate SAMAP for introducing me to the history and the contribution. So
Were you able to visit? Remember, you were at the museum, and I want to say thank you for bringing your folks to the museum and also doing the donations, because she does a donation every time she comes. So we thank you for that. And I had mentioned Mi Pueblito, which is an area 4th of July. I don't know if that day you were able to visit the place, and it has like relics of how some of the buildings looked back in the day, and also a church. So I don't know if you were able to.
Yes, we do. We actually visit there now, and because they also have other replicas of homes like from Bocas and different places. And so, yes, we were able to. Thank you for introducing me to Mi Pueblito, because we are able to visit there. But I still think that even with Mi Pueblito, and I like Mi Pueblito, the church, the museum, I still think has been very creative in using that space to tell the story. So the difference at Mi Pueblito is that you have the replica, which is great because you go in and you see it as the church that it was. But how, SAMAP and its volunteers and, the government have been able to take the original building and break it up into different areas of life experienced by the diggers, I think is what makes it very special. I think that's what makes it the museum as opposed to the replica. And so I think that both places have their value.
Right.
And with the SAMAP, I think it's very interesting. And I think coming there, bringing my first big group there, I brought my first big group in 2020. And one thing that I noticed was that some of us don't realize the Caribbean backgrounds that we have, the West Indian backgrounds. People came in and they were like, they start thinking, where was my grandmama from? Where was she from? Because they saw so many things that they could connect to their own childhood, and that was special.
And that leads me to mention, Charlotte, that, over the years, prior to my getting involved in it, especially at the presidential level, SAMAP would express their mission, the reason for being, as an organization to raise funds to maintain the museum. And while that had its value, I believe, for all the years before, when I came, I pushed for them to express it differently. Our mission is really to preserve our history and to promote our culture. And we do that through the museum, but the museum is not the end of all that we do. So as we work with the museum, we're trying to get that. We're trying to get folks to make sure that historical connection is maintained, that historical contribution is preserved. We don't want people to forget what we did here. It's something like the Gettysburg Address. People would pass and times would pass, but nobody's supposed to forget what we did here. That's what it's all.
Living in a day where, especially in the United States, people are so aggressively trying to erase history, making it illegal. Basically making it illegal to teach certain areas of history. This is when this is so important. It is. This is so important. Nowadays, with the internet, it's not as easy to just wipe things off of the face of the earth. So the things that are happening are being documented, even, as we're doing this video. Somebody will be watching this 20 years from now.
That's exactly right. That's the
We're
value in
our
all of
voice
that.
into it, but how you put that is very important. And I think it was a strategic and a very wise recommendation for SAMAP, because just raising money is one thing. Saving and maintaining and preserving legacy of our ancestors who have paved the way for us is something completely different. That takes on a whole nother level. So I appreciate that. We're going to talk about what's happening in August. Okay. And by the way, guys, I will be selling tickets for the gala. So, holla at your girl. But I want to say this. Okay. I want y'all to talk to me about the events that happen that are going to take place in August, the reason for them. And then I want to just say how excited I am to experience. I've been to the gala once and I've been to the pilgrimage once. And I'm so excited because now I'm going from a different perspective. I've learned so much since the first time that I've gone. I've become a real Panamanian, baby. Y'all not getting rid of me. You understand?
We don't want it.
I love Panama. And so I'm so excited just to see how I receive it and what I learn. And every time I come to SAMAP, I learn something different, and I'm so excited. So, Marcia, you want to start telling us about the August events?
Okay. Well, we start with a church service on Sunday. And
that's going to be, and that's on what? Is that the August 17th? What day is that?
13th.
That's the 13th.
So Sunday the 13th.
Church service starts the 13th. Y'all heard that? Church the 13th. Okay.
It's a local church. And I think Monday, I might not have everything in order, but we also do a program at a local school.
Cool.
And we do the pilgrimage.
That will be on Monday.
Monday.
Okay.
We do the
And
pilgrimage.
the
I think that's
program at
on
the local
Wednesday.
school is this narrating history or?
Pretty
There-
much
it-
talking about.
They have done different things. Let me just add to that. They've done over the years. They've done different things at the schools.
Mhm.
This particular instance, they're getting the classes involved in putting up murals and in probably putting up talks. So the students are going to be involved in doing things that will project to the canal construction. They want them to be able to capture the history. And so that's what we're all about.
So far, I'm telling you, probably the most important thing is what happens at the school at that level. Because like Arcelio said, you know, he's a baby. He's a baby.
Thank you.
We have to keep, we have to keep we have to keep people engaged so that they can continue to tell the story like the ones that have gone on before us. So that's interesting. And getting them involved into doing murals, that's awesome.
Yes. And they do get excited. They get excited about
Yes.
it. But I'll let Marcia continue with the rest of it.
Okay.
With what I remember. So then we have the pilgrimage on the 17th. That's a free event. And we are supposed to be having 2 boats because it's a very large group.
3 boats this time.
Oh, we got 3 boats. Because last count, I think we had 82 folks attending. So 3 boats. And we have balloons. We have 3 color balloons. I don't know if I need to go into that kind of detail. But each balloon, the color represents a different group. And we'll release those balloons. We also release petals in the lake for our ancestors. And then with the balloons, we're thinking about having folks call out the names of their ancestor that actually worked the canal. So I think that will be probably very emotional for the people. And the gala is on Sunday.
Before we pass by that pilgrimage, okay. I want a little better. I want people to understand. I don't know that. I mean, I think that we're talking in a way where we might be assuming that people understand what it's about. But I need a more in-depth, you know, I want to talk more in depth about that.
Let me add something to that then,
Okay.
Charlotte, if I may. The pilgrimage is actually a memorial service. It's a religious memorial service in which we go out and we are remembering and honoring those who died prior, especially those who died during the construction of this great engineering marvel. And we're reaching out to remember them. We want folks to remember that there were people who came, labored, worked hard, gave their lives. I mean, or in fact, they didn't come to give their lives, but many of them actually died in that construction in order that this project could succeed. So we go out and it's a very touching memorial service, and it to the point that I recall last year when we did it, and we had invited a pastor to be the speaker at the event. We always have a pastor that would bring a religious message. And this young man, it's a young man, without anybody realizing or didn't know that this would happen, but when he began to speak, he says, you know, this is so emotionally meaningful for him because his grandfather, who had worked in the construction of the canal, was actually lying in the depths of that water. His grandfather had died in that construction period. And of course, never was rescued. He's under there. And so it was impacting to hear that and to see that how folks still connect with that past. It's the first time he has been that close to where his grandfather may be laying. And so it's an emotional time, and that's the whole gist of it. we're honoring the past, but and over the years, this evolved. They started out doing the petals, and they would put the petals, throw petals in the water, and basically kind of call out names of anybody that you remember that might have been in the past, part of this era. But in the last, I think it's maybe over the last 10 years, 10, 12 years or so, that one of the members, in fact, one of the members that was the original sponsor of the idea of doing this pilgrimage, Cedric Gittins, he came up with the idea of doing the balloons. And so he introduced these balloons. That the idea was to release the balloons, and we have different colors: black for those who have died, red for the ones who are working now, the ones that are their blood is they're toiling now, and then green, which is a hope for those who will come in the future. And so we're releasing these 3 colored balloons with those significance in that. And so while you may release a black balloon and call somebody who is gone, you may release a red balloon and call somebody who's working now.
Okay.
And you release a green balloon, you may call some grandchild of yours, and would hope that eventually he may come and be a part of this workforce theory.
Or she.
So it's all that.
He or she.
He or she.
That's awesome.
Not sure what else I'm missing. And then there's a gala, which is
They're on Wednesday. On Wednesday, Marcia, there is the we're having some documentaries with with Professor.
Is that at the theatral?
It's going to be at the auditorium in the university campus. And this is with Geraldo Maloney, who has done several documentaries. He likes to do documentaries on jazz and calypso. So it's going to be a chambo jazz session where we will talk about that history of these folks who came and developed that kind of music. And then we'll see these documentaries he has made in the past. So it's going to be quite a good experience, I think, because I have seen the documentaries, and having him present to talk and to be able to answer questions is going to be, I think, a rich moment for those who would go to that as well. That's going to be on the Wednesday.
We're also showing a documentary of the apprentices.
Yes.
And that is what day?
That's on Friday. That's on Friday.
The apprentices.
Yes.
The Panama Canal,
yeah, he can explain because he worked there.
Because the Panama Canal had an apprenticeship program that was instituted back around the 1960s, when they finally were breaking down the barriers and allowing our groups, our Black West Indians, to be able to come into the canal workforce and work in these capacities that had been totally reserved only for whites. Prior to that, if you came in and you were in the mechanical fields, you could only be a helper. You could not be the electrician. You could not be the machinist. You could not be the pipe fitter. You could not hold any of those craft positions. And so when they got the treaty signed between Eisenhower and Ramon back in 1955, I guess it was, part of that treaty broke that barrier, and they had to open up these positions. And so when they did, because the canal was still very prominently in English, the ones who could adapt more to that entry were the West Indians.
Yes.
And so the flood of those who came into those positions at that time were West Indian descendants.
Very good information.
So the documentary that we have developed, we interviewed several of those, some of them who were there from the very beginning, some who came afterwards, but it's them telling their stories about some of them even had some hardships, the hardships and the pains that they may have suffered, but eventually the successes that they all enjoyed as they got into this workforce.
Were you a apprentice?
I was.
Wow.
I was.
And that's how we have the history of the gold roll and the silver roll. Because the gold roll was what the whites made, and then the silver roll was what the Caribbeans made. And I think that was like 10 cents an hour, if my memory serves me correctly.
Compared to what?
compared to, I think, 25.
Yeah, because when they started the construction, it was at least two, maybe 2.5 times to one what they paid the blacks. Of course, the blacks were employed, those that came from the Caribbean, like Marcia just mentioned, were employed to do the menial tasks, the digging, the shovels, and all that. But they also were forced to train them. They needed to run machines to put dynamite in, and eventually they took them or were able to do that. And some of them came also. We must not forget that some of them did come as men. They were brick masons and they were carpenters. And they came and they were employed in those positions. But even while they worked in those positions, they were not paid comparatively the same as the whites.
Okay, so we need to back up just for a second.
Yes.
Because she brought up the gold road and the silver road. Okay, there are people that don't know,
Don't understand that.
that don't understand that that was the United States contribution to Panama. That was their answer. It was the Jim Crow.
That's right.
Using gold and silver as opposed to white and black.
That's
so
right.
that is
That's
what
right.
The United States contributed to Panama. One of the things. So I just want people to understand.
The whites were paid in gold currencies. The blacks were paid in silver currency.
Wow.
So it made a distinction. It was a class. It was a racial and class division that was highly enforced. It was a segregational type of condition that was very, very negative to the blacks, because in addition to paying differently, the blacks who were given housing, but it's of course a lower class of housing than the whites would enjoy. Even then, they were charged rent for their housing, while the whites in a better class with a higher pay were able to live rent-free.
So the whites that were here building the canal, and I'm just thinking of this now. Where did they go? Where did they go? Did they all leave when Jimmy Carter turned it over, or no? Where are they?
Well, you need to think about the whites that were here when they built the canal.
Right.
Of course, they remained. They did not. You could not get them to leave. They remained. They took on the jobs, and they kept, because life was so good.
Yes.
I mean, you are not going to want to give that up and go back to working in the U.S. compared with competing with everybody else and dealing with the weather. They stayed and they enjoyed a cushy lifestyle all the way through into the 50s, because that Jim Crow condition remained even to then, even into the 50s. Mm-hmm. There was a high segregation. When they finally implemented the treaty, it wasn't the treaty, not the Carter, the Torrijos-Carter Treaty, which started to take effect in 1979. Mm-hmm. And it projected that for 20 years, they would have a transition period. And the canal would finally be turned over to Panama in 1999, right. December 1999. So yes, what you asked is what happened with many of them. Many of them opted to bail out. Because
they left before they lost their cush.
They left before they lost their cush, many of them, because many of them figured it would collapse. In fact,
without the American brilliance.
Some of them even probably may have hoped that it would collapse.
Wow.
They left, and you're left with a gloat, thinking that they're leaving and it's going to all come to naught because they're not here. Well, thank God the Panamanians were able to rise up to the occasion, and they have done an extremely good job at managing the canal.
Wow.
It has become highly, highly profitable for Panama.
It has
improved from where it was when the Americans had it to where it is now. So
that is
it's a source of great pride for
Yeah.
anyone that's Panamanian,
yes.
and definitely a source of even greater pride for us West Indians
Mhm.
who know that we're part of the beginning of this whole enterprise.
And then
That's
also we built a second set of locks, and that's all Panamanian. So
Yes.
that
Yes.
is another sense of pride to
Definitely.
go to these places
So
and see
when
that.
was the second locks done? The second locks that were built or can accommodate larger ships.
Yes,
Meaning,
correct.
and some of the system is a recycled water, correct?
yes, that's right.
Correct.
When was that
Yeah.
finished?
It was finished, actually inaugurated in 2016, July of 2016. It was open, finally completed. The work started back. I mean, they launched it off in what was it, 2007? I guess it was somewhere around
Wow.
2007, and it was finally completed in 2016, inaugurated, and it's been a boom. It's been a boom. In fact, the demand that they're facing, the challenge for that locks is put them in a spot where they're saying, we need to start thinking of what else.
Wow, what's next? So okay, now I'm probably gonna fail this history test. But the original locks was done, was it 1903?
1914.
19.
1914. Panama became independent from Colombia in 1903, and they immediately signed this treaty with the U.S. to build that first set of locks. And so the U.S. came in 1904 and started working, and the canal was finally completed in 1914. So that's when the first canal was inaugurated, August of 1914.
Okay, y'all know you got to keep me on track, okay? But I'm sorry, I got to ask this question. So, how do you feel that Panama rebounded from the impact of the silver and gold roll? Like, where do you see Panama now with regard to equal opportunity, or discrimination or racism? What is your take?
Panama was always not saint in this regard as well. There's no ascribing to them sainthood regarding the race situation, because back then when the United States was forcing this type of Jim Crow situation, Panama did not object. In fact, Panama actually, because we had blacks who were here already in Panama from the Spaniards' colonial period, and we call them, you tend to refer to them as the colonial blacks, and they speak Spanish. And then for the canal construction, well, not just for the canal, for the railroad construction back in 1850, for the French attempt to construct the canal in 1880, and then for the US finally constructing the canal in 1904, 1914, they used Caribbean labor. They used black from the West Indies. And that caused quite a clash with the ones who were here. And then the local...
There lies the divide between the...
There was a divide.
Was a divide,
okay. And then Panama itself, not just the Panama Criollos, the mestizos, the European descendant portion of Panama, they also, we had one case where a president, 1941, Arnulfo Arias, actually brought in a new constitution that outlawed these black from the West Indies. They actually declared them as persona non grata. And many of them who had owned businesses at the time, those businesses were lost. And their children who had been born here suddenly found themselves in a void. They were neither from the West Indies and they were not given Panamanian citizenship.
You said something, I think, and you probably don't even know, you said it in Spanish. And I want to make sure that everybody knows what you said. So they said persona gratis, meaning you're not Panamanian.
Persona
Was it
non
saying you're
grata
not Panamanian if you're black?
You're not welcome here.
You're not welcome.
And so in fact, what the Constitution said, they said the immigration of folks who are of black, Indian, and Chinese, and by black, they had to distinguish it. A black that do not speak Spanish, to distinguish them from the ones that are here, you are of prohibited entry. You are not to enter this country.
Now, what's also important is I think y'all got rid of him real quick, didn't
Yeah,
you?
he was overthrown, and that
I
constitution
wish
was
that
thrown out.
I wish we could take notes in the United States because we need to do some overthrowing. Okay, but y'all came together as a people
Yes,
and
yes.
got rid of
There's
them.
a monument for him close to where Carmela lives, in Balboa, close to the Balboa Union Church. His wife did that.
That was okay. You know,
President.
I have to shout out. I gotta shout out T.O. Jolly. T.O. Jolly is the best Afro-Panamanian tour professional in Panama I've ever met. And so much of what y'all are talking, I know about because he's on our tours every month teaching us all of this. And I'm so proud. All right, T.O., that's your shout out, babe. Okay, so you're saying, you know, it's not like Panama was an angel and, you know, not having its issues with racism, but how do you feel the situation is now?
One of the things that occurred, I guess, after they threw that constitution out, after the blacks were able to settle in, especially the West Indian, because like I said, we had blacks, but not West Indian. West Indian groups were able to settle, and they're mostly settling on working in the canal, working in the cities. Eventually, especially as they would capture that these blacks, and when they opened up the treaty and they started opening these positions, you must realize that these blacks are representing Panama. These West Indians, English speaking, that are going into the canal, they're actually representing you. And so their success is your success. And so they began to embrace that as well. And so now you're Panamanian, because you have to identify that you are not from the West Indies, you're Panama working. It's a means of me embracing you in that position. And so that began to work. And then they began to open up further, and several of the other Panamanians began to enter the canal. Of course, you're entering the canal and being trained by these black West Indians here. And so they were key and instrumental in bringing on a development of a culture that has permeated through the canal for all these years. And I think is essential. That's one of the things that is brought out in that documentary that we have about the canal apprenticeship program. I feel that a lot is owed to those men and women. Some women were there that came in and worked in those positions in those early times, proving that they could do it, proving to the world that you can take on these jobs and you can be good at them. And many of them were just super great at what they did. And so that came in. But going a little further, you asked, where are we now? And the fight, even though the black colonials are here, they were discriminated against also. You're not the West Indian descendants don't like you because you speak Spanish. They also consider you a lesser person. And so over the years, the blacks, both the West Indian descendants and the colonial groups, have had to merge. They've had to come together and bond in a force that is bringing about great changes in the country. And I can give you some examples. The big celebration that we have now of Panama's Black Ethnic Day. Dia de la Negra, that celebration, which began in 2000, that is the result of this conglomerate group coming together and forcing that, pushing that, moving for that. The idea sparked with a guy, Clara Richards, all the way from Puerto Armuelles in Chiriquí, but the groups here got behind that idea and pushed it forward. It's the groups here that, coming together, have managed to prompt the government to create what we have now as a Secretariat of Black Affairs, basically.
SAMAP.
SAMAP that's the Secretariat for the National Secretariat for Afro Descendants Affairs, and so they're attending to both groups, and so that office was created. And then again, that force kept pushing, and now that office managed to get this office elevated to a position where it has its own independence. That was just declared by law a few months ago. And it's that office that has managed to push forward a census that is completely different from the census that was held in 2010. The census that was held in 2010 was saying, showing as a result that we had only 9.7% of blacks in this country, Afros identified. Now the result is we have 31.7 who have identified themselves as blacks. And
we could go deeper.
I think the significant thing, we still have to wait to get some information that is, I think, is pending, and I haven't heard it brought forward yet. Because we have the results of how many blacks, 31.7. We have the results of how many Indian origins there, 17.1, which gives a total between the two groups of a little over 49%. So then my question is, when I take the Chinese and find their percentage, how much is left between the Criollos and the Mestizos, and that group of the West, the European descendants that are here? When you identify, you're probably going to get that they are less than 25% each. So you're probably looking at the majority group being blacks.
Well,
that's my estimation.
I think the key word here is identify.
Yes.
And I think that one thing that we, have to embrace and understand and accept as African Americans or Black Americans, however one decides to refer to themselves as, is coming into, we're Black.
Yes.
In the US, listen, you can run around looking like me saying you ain't Black all you want. Everybody else is looking at you like you Bobo the fool. Okay, but here, because there is no white,
yes.
That's why I said, where did the white people go? Because there aren't a lot of people that I see in Panama moving about, they're not white people. Everybody is melanated. So it's just a matter of how melanated are you, but in the United States, it's like, if you're Black, you're Black. And most of us recognize that. But I think, and I find in Panama that not everyone who looks like me identifies as Black. And as far as I'm concerned, that's your business. However you want to identify yourself is fine with me.
And part of the, go ahead, Marcia, go ahead.
Yeah, I also think that the census, that number is a higher number. And it's simply because they do not want to identify themselves as Afro, period.
Period. Not yet, but at least now you have the option. That is what's important, is that you have the option. And even when I say, okay, I came to Panama with a certain idea in mind. I came to Panama and I was gonna be a sister lock. That's how I met SAMAP. SAMAP let me come in and tell the crowd of the group about sister locks. Because Sister Locks was not here, and I was going to bring Sister Locks, and that was going to be my business. At the time, when I started down this journey, I knew there wasn't a strong enough, soul sister, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud, segment of Panama City, the area that I would be in, that would identify with Sister Locks. I could see what the sisters was doing here in the early 2000s, the mid 2000s in Panama. But I said, and I thank God for the Holy Spirit who gives me wisdom and discernment and witty ideas. He said, hallelujah. But that's today. Do what you do and trust that Panama will be embracing more of its Afro culture by the time you get there. Because this was several years ahead of us moving. And then when I hear sending that and understand exactly for the first time, I understand exactly how important their position and role is in this the Black culture here in Panama. I am grateful because more people are embracing their ethnicity here. And so whereas you say, you know, a lot of people may not have identified on this first census, but by the next one, God willing, creek don't rise, they will be.
Yeah, I think so. And Marcia's right, because I was able to speak to some folks who, even within a family, where the mother saying, you know, I am married to a West Indian descendant of what they would call, she says, refer to them as Karabali. And which means that they're high brown, they're very light-skinned Black person.
Light-skinned.
Light-skinned black person. And then she is herself, you know, Panamanian light-skinned. So their children are very light. But his mother, the husband's mother, is Black.
Mm-hmm.
And so
probably from Jamaica or somewhere.
Very likely from Jamaica. And so the daughters, their children, they have a daughter and a son. And the daughter, who embraces with great affection her grandmother, even with her light skin, she says, when they come knocking this door, I am Black. But the son says, I am not, I am white.
Wow.
So within a family structure, you have one that's claiming and the other one is rejecting. So we still have, I'm sure, we still have folks who have not embraced it completely, but it's a big step forward from 9.1% to 31.7%. It's a great
That
jump.
is great. And it'll just get more and more. Oh my goodness. I told you, see, this is how it goes. This is how it goes. We could go on and on. We got to get to the last part, which is the gala. But I will tell you this. From the perspective of an outsider, I'm Black, okay? I am Black. And from the perspective of an outsider, you know, whatever the racism is here, it is very different than what I'm accustomed to, okay? What I find is that here, it's not as much about my Black as it is about my green.
Yes.
So here,
the
fact that I could possibly create or present an opportunity trumps that Black card all day long. Whereas in the United States, we're so obsessed with tones, skin tones. You know, even within the Black community, like, how Black are you? You know what I'm saying? If you're too blackity, black, you might not get the job. They want to hire the light-skinned people, the whole brown bag stuff, the stuff that we even deal with within our communities is so intense. It is so intense for me, and I don't deal with probably the regular things that Panamanians, the average Panamanian, might deal with. So I don't speak for everybody. I'm speaking from my experience. I have been seated at tables with people who would not have let me stand on their step in the United States. So I can say from my personal experience that racism, I am not ignorant to the fact that there is some of that here, and I can feel it sometimes, okay? And I know when I know. But more than anything, you're not so obsessed with it that it's going to prevent you from doing business with me.
It tends to be more subtle here.
Subtle.
It tends to be more subtle. And,
well, I think it's subtle, depending on where you're at.
Where you are, yes.
And what financial status they see you at. That plays a big role.
The green.
Because
the green.
When I go to the grocery store, certain places I'm followed. And it's upsetting sometimes, you know, and sometimes I call them out on the carpet, you know, why are you following me? You know?
I used to get that a lot. I don't find it as much anymore. You know, and I mean, I find a lot of growth in Panama since I've started coming here in 2004. I can say that. Okay, I'll say this. I feel like from coming here, the beginning, first time I came here was 2004. So I'm almost 20 years being connected with Panama in some way. What I can say from my personal experience and being in Panama is that Panama is moving forward. Okay.
Right.
Unfortunately, from 2004, when I first started coming here, what I have to say about my home country is that we're moving back.
Backwards.
And that's I can't be a part. I fought too hard to get to, we fought too hard to get to where we are, to be able to accept a situation when we're going in the wrong direction. Okay, and that is why, and that is one of the reasons why I'm so happy that I'm here. You know, not to say that Panama is without issues. However, comma, I love the fact that my forefathers and my hard work personally has allowed me the privilege to make a choice.
Right.
I choose to be here at this time, and I wish my family would choose to be here too. Okay. So like I said, we have to come back for all this conversation because I'm telling you, it's hot, hot, hot. But let's get to the gala part. Talk to me about August 20th, the gala that concludes this amazing week that everybody's going to want to know more about after they hear this interview. Talk to me about the
gala. As I mentioned, SAMAP, you know, of course, had one of its mission is fundraising in order to do its support work for the museum. And the two main fundraisers is the fair, the West Indian Fair, that they have a big West Indian Fair at Carnival time. And that's a huge activity. And then this gala celebration that culminates the week of Semana CONSULTATION, Know Your Canal week. And so the gala is actually a kind of a formal dinner dance celebration. And in that, we always recognize 4, maybe 5 of our community persons that have distinguished themselves over the years for one reason or another, especially trying to honor those West Indian descendants who have done well, and they would be good examples, good projections for the rest of the community to look up and try to emulate. So this year, the gala is going to be on the 20th. It's a paid event. The tickets are $55 per person. And we are honoring 4 persons, 2 ladies and 2 gentlemen. And of the females, of the ones we're honoring, there is one lady, Norma Lewis, I'm sorry, went black. Norma Lewis. Well, of course, they're all Panamanians. Norma Lewis is Panamanian born, but she has resided in the States for many years and done a lot of work there. But she has done significant work here with children. She's a real core at trying to ease the pain of children who are in poverty. And so over the last 20 years or so, she has been working with a number of children here in Panama and done an outstanding job in giving them opportunities that they probably would not otherwise have had. Then we have Frances Williams Yearwood. Frances, of course, again, born in Panama, lived in the United States. But Frances is a lady that came back to Panama some years ago, tried to check out her parents' grave site buried in Corozal, saw it in a disaster, took it upon herself to canvass and get support from people, both in the US and here, to launch an effort to try to rescue the cemeteries that are called the Silver Cemeteries. Those are where most of the West Indians are buried, Corozal, Gatun, and Mount Hope. And she has been doing a fantastic job in that regards, and she's one of those that will be recognized at the gala. And then we have, we always have somebody from the actual Panama Canal workforce. We're honoring a pilot who is also a port captain, Douglas Rodriguez, born in the province of Bocas del Toro. So it's good to know that we are finding somebody from all over there. And he is now presently serving in the canal and has also done some work in his community, especially in Bocas del Toro. And the final person on our list is Earl Holder. Earl Holder was the first Black pilot in the Panama Canal. And he came into the canal workforce, I think around 1980 or somewhere around there. And but he started working, Earl started working as a water boy, you know, at probably, I don't know how old he might have been, very young age. And he moved up the ranks, moved in through the canal and up, and eventually became a towboat master, eventually became a pilot. And he was the first Black pilot in the canal. He retired several years after, of course, a total of 50 years working in the canal. But in addition, we're really excited about his celebration because God's willing, we're praying hard for that. He will celebrate 100 years in September.
Wow.
And so those are the folks that we'll be honoring at the gala on September 20th.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And what a, what an amazing culmination of, of the celebration. And I love how, you're uplifting and giving people flowers, right now. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. I will have all of that information when I post these so that people know where to come to learn more about SAMAP and to learn more about the events that are going on. We have to get ready to wrap up. This has been an amazing conversation, but I just would like for one or both of you combined to tell me why it's important for people to support SAMAP, why it's important for people to just be a part of what you're doing and how they can.
I'll go first as a female.
Yes, go ahead.
For me, it's important because I want for people to know about the history of the Blacks here in this country. That is huge for me. And that's one of the reasons why I became a member of SAMAP. I was asked if whenever I moved to Panama, if I would become a member because of what whomever thought I could contribute. So here I am. The other thing that we're doing in conjunction with SAMAP is a fraternity, Alpha Psi fraternity. They have a chapter here in Panama now, Alpha Panama, and we're doing an effort to try to bring Black history into the school's curriculum.
Wow.
And right now, we go to Calan, we're using one of the high schools in Calan as a pilot, where we're teaching them different subjects, but the first one is about that we came before Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
See these kids' faces when they hear that the richest man in the world up to today has been Mansa Musa, which is an African back when. And what we do is that we ask—
see my face. All right.
One of the things that we ask them is, who do you think is the richest man in the world? Of course, they come up with Bezos and Gates and all these people. Yes. So I went on the internet and I said, Mansa Musa, in today's dollars, he would have had $15 billion.
Wow.
So if I'm not mistaken, that is all three of those rich people combined. And how, they did commerce. There's a video of ships going back and forth. That's all that was done way back when, before Columbus even came here. Another thing that we teach is on whitening of the race. That's a big one. We teach them also about, buying a house and so forth and so on. So there's that effort. And also SAMAP is doing the same thing. So we'll get together. We did meet with Krishna Camarena, and something was signed, I think 2 weeks ago, about that, getting the Black history in the school's curriculum. So I am beaming about that piece and hoping that folks will come, visit the museum, support the museum, because there's a lot of work to be done. And most of us are up there in age. So we need to get some of the young folks to come in, be part of it. That way they can continue the legacy that was started back in 1981. So I want to say thank you for having us and be able to share our story.
Absolutely. It's my honor. Absolutely. Go ahead, Arcelio.
Again, I just want to say thank you also, Charlotte. You have been key. I met you coming to the museum, seeing the support that you've given SAMAP through that. And this is another extension of that support, even as you try to put a blast out so that other people, this will reach God knows how many people, and they'll get to know about what SAMAP is doing. SAMAP is being, like we mentioned, it's been in its existence 40 years. It's actually the oldest of the Black groups here in Panama, and it has managed to maintain stability and, you know, steadfastness over those years. And so, even as I know that other groups have come up with their purpose and their participation, SAMAP is important. SAMAP represents the stability, represents the firmness, and it is one that has managed to get itself in the levels where it's respected throughout the entire governmental structure. So Marcia just mentioned it. We're actually campaigning. Parts of my commitment in the presidency is making us a heartfelt reach out to capture younger folk into the organization and get them participating. And we aim to do that. You know, one way or the other, we will do it. We have a few of them that are involved right now and are doing great. And we're confident that we're going to get more of them into this program. And so thank you for giving us that exposure. And if folks, just so folks know, we have probably around at least about 250 members total for SAMAP. And no less than at least a third of those are in the United States. So living abroad does not prevent you from being a member of SAMAP and an effective member. We have, especially now that we're doing our meetings on Zoom, we have members from the United States that are connected and are part and are vocal and are contributing greatly to what we're doing here as well. So any one of them can be a part of SAMAP. You can donate both in your finances and you can donate definitely in your time. We welcome you, anyone that comes.
I think that's a very important point to make, because I mean, prior to you saying that, there are people, you know, watching and thinking, you know what, that's really good. But then when you let them know, actually, you can be a part of us from where you are. You know, that right there is very powerful. Listen, I appreciate you guys' time. Of course, you know, I went over my producers, they be like, girl, it'd be good though. You know what I'm saying? It'd just be good. So I just want to thank you guys for coming. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the pilgrimage and of course at the gala. And I'm just going to be there like a sponge, you know, continuing. I'm so proud of just the history that I've been able to learn. And I mean, I'm not, you know, a real Panamanian, but I'm so.
Yes, you are. We embrace you as one. Don't worry. We embrace you as one.
I'm an adopted Panamanian.
Totally adopted.
I'm
totally.
I'm so proud of just the way that you guys are preserving your culture and just moving it forward. It's more important than we really even realize today. You know, it's so funny because we do stuff and we just do what we do because that's what we feel like is the right thing to do. And we don't even think about it. But somebody said to me one day, and I do a lot of stuff and people always say, girl, you be doing so much. But somebody said something to me one day that really just touched my heart. And they said, do your grandchildren know who you are? And that was such a high compliment. And it was such a wonderful reminder that what we're doing with these precious moments that we have on this earth matter. And I thank you both that we have done something today that will forever be in the universe. 20, 30 years from now, people can watch this and learn what you've taught us today. So thank you. God bless you all.
We appreciate it greatly.
I love you to pieces.
Love you.
You too.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Take care.